welcome to Budget MTG Decks. All magic fun, all cards under $1. I'm David, this is my cousin Ruud.
Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about a fun and effective EDH deck, also known as a commander deck. Our decks you can build without spending a lot of money because we have one additional build rule, and that is that all our cards need to be under $1 in price, with the exception of the commander, because we do need a very cool commander for our deck. So let's take a look at the commander.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but it is getting hot in here because today we have as our commander Purphoros, God of the Forge. For 3 colorless and a red, we get a 6/5 legendary enchantment creature. This guy is indestructible, but he's not a creature unless your devotion to red is 5 or more. He gets an additional bonus, which you can use, which is to pay 2 colorless and a red, and then you can pump all your creatures, give them all +1/+0. But that's all well and good, but this is not the reason why we chose Purphoros. Purphoros has a very cool, very nice ability, which is whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Purphoros deals 2 damage to each player. Now this is the reason why we're going to be building this deck. The role of this commander is going to be to do 2 points of damage simultaneously to all your opponents, win the game like that, and also with your regular guys you're going to be attacking and pumping them up. So what kind of cards are we going to need to make this work?
Well, of course we have one commander card. We have 23 multiple creature cards. These are cards that will put down many creatures. This is of course because we would like to use the ability of Purphoros. We have repeatable token cards that put down a token each turn. We also have sacrifice outlets. We're going to be sacrificing our goblin tokens and maybe also elementals or other tokens. We have 11 creature synergy cards because we do need some attacking to help Purphoros win the game. In most cases, of course, we have 40 lands too. In most cases we don't want Purphoros to be a creature, we don't want the devotion, that's why we have all the tokens. And this is because we want to keep him on the battlefield, and it's much more difficult to exile or return to hand an enchantment than it is to exile or return to hand a creature. Yeah. Because you can't destroy him. Well, while he's a creature, he could get -5/-5, or maybe exile the card. Yeah. That kind of stuff is much easier to do than removing an enchantment when it has indestructible.
Yeah, exactly. So in the end we're going to be doing a lot of damage, just trying to get everybody from 40 down to 0, and pretty much the cool thing is you're going to be doing it simultaneously to everybody. Yeah. Let's have a look at the ideal turn progression. What are we going to need turn 1?
Turn 1, in an ideal situation we will put down some creature synergy, so we can pump all our creatures from turn 2 onward. Turn 2 we want some multiple creatures, just a card that puts down multiple creatures. Turn 3 sacrifice outlet, to sacrifice our creatures later on. Turn 4 of course the commander, and then turn 5 repeatable tokens, so a repeatable token card. And then turn 6 onward multiple creatures. And that's, well, you have to think about 6 creatures a turn or maybe even more. That's what we're going to try to do. So we're going to do loads of damage from turn 6 onward, maybe turn 5 also. Yeah,
so basically the game goes as follows. You put down a couple of guys, then it's turn 4, you put down Purphoros, then you start putting out tokens, people get 2 damage, 2 damage, 2 damage, 2 more damage, 2 more damage. You just start attacking with all your little creatures and then everybody's dead.
Easy.
Sounds pretty simple. To get this game started, let's have a look at the multiple creatures. We've divided the multiple creature cards into cards that give us either 2 creatures, 3 creatures, 4 or more creatures, or X creatures, where X is the amount of mana you pay. We're going to start with the cards that give us 2 creatures. Dragon Fodder for a colorless and a red. It's a sorcery, which gives us 2 1/1 red goblin tokens.
Pretty simple. It's 1 Purphoros is on the battlefield, 4 damage to each opponent, so that's already 10% of their life totals.
Very nice. Krenko's command is functional reprint. It is for colorless and a red. Excuse me. It also gives us 2 of those little red goblins.
Simple.
Same story. Molten Birth is a little bit different. For colorless and 2 red, we also get a sorcery that puts down 2 1/1 red elemental creatures onto the battlefield. And it's got a really cool bonus because you can flip a coin, and if you win the flip, then you get the card back into your hand, so you can cast it on another turn.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. Well, it's card advantage of course. but well, maybe it's a little gamble, but still. Some people don't have a coin available. You can also use a die to just roll odd or even.
Yeah, not a problem. Then we go to Mog Alarm for a colorless and 2 red, and it's also sorcery. It also gives us 2 1/1 goblins, just like the Dragon Fodder and the Krangos command. However, it's a little bit more expensive because it's got an additional ability.
Yeah, you may sacrifice 2 mountains instead of paying Mog Alarm's mana cost, which could come in very handy. Maybe you have a very big X card to put down 6 or 7 creature tokens at end of game, of course, and then well, you don't need your mounts anymore, because with 4 points of damage you can destroy everybody that's still there. Yeah. Could come in handy that you can just sacrifice 2 mountains. It saves you a turn, which, well, maybe you could be killed in if you would take a longer to finish the game.
Yeah, exactly. So it's pretty handy. Empty the Warrens is next for 3 colorless and a red. It's also sorcery. Gives us again 2 1/1 goblins, but this one has Storm.
Yeah, this is a very nice ability. When you cast this spell, copy it for each spell cast before it this turn. So that's only spells you cast, so nothing you copy or just play it again. It's just when you cast a spell. Well, this is with the creature cards that put 2 creatures onto the battlefield, but it's actually more, because Storm is that you copy it, of course, and you will only play this card late game when you have played low casting cost card before it, or maybe just the Mog Alarm, something like that. And then this puts down already 4 creature tokens, so that makes it, well, even more.
Yeah, it's even better if you can cast even more spells before that, such as, for example, the spell that's next, Mirror Sire for 2 colorless. We get a 1/1 little guy, colorless artifact Mirror, and when this guy dies, you get to put down a 1/1 colorless artifact Mirror token onto the battlefield. So it basically replaces itself one time.
True.
Then we go to Tuk Tuk the Explorer for 2 colorless and a red. We get a 1/1 goblin with haste, which is pretty cool. A little expensive for a 1/1 goblin with haste. However, when Tuk Tuk dies, you get to put down a 5/5 legendary colorless artifact golem onto the battlefield. That's pretty big.
Yeah, it's a big creature. Of course, it's just a nice creature to have. It's a 1/1 haste, so you can attack right away. But maybe you have a sacrifice outlet when you cast Purphoros turn 4, and then you already have a 5/5 creature turn 4. So turn 5 you can attack with it, or of course block with it. So that's very nice, very good card.
Yeah, and also just let's not forget that when he comes in, that's 2 points of damage to everybody, and then when he dies and the golem comes into play, that's another 2 points of damage, all for 1 card.
To each opponent.
Yeah. Hound of Gristlebrand for 2 colorless and 2 red gives us a 2/2 double striker with Undying.
Yeah, this creature, Undying, when it dies, if it had no +1/+1 counters on it, then it is returned to the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. So it gets even bigger. So at first you have a 2/2 double strike, and when it dies it's going to be a 3/3 double strike. So it enters 2 times, so that's 4 points of damage total with Purphoros. And of course, a very big threat. A double strike dude is pretty annoying.
Yeah, absolutely. Very nice. Apocryphite is next. For 2 colorless, we get a 1/1 guy. Also, this guy replaces himself because when this guy dies, it leaves play with, let me see, with 3 time counters. So after 3 turns, it comes back with an additional 3 regular +1/+1 counters. So it comes back as a 4/4. And every time it dies, 3 turns later, it comes back again. Probably only going to happen about once, but still not bad for 2 mana.
Yeah, this is pretty nice. You say it happens once. It could be 2 times, but well, I think that's max, because games don't take that long with Purphoros. Either all the other players die or you die.
Yeah.
Mostly the other players, of course.
Naturally.
Yeah, but still, when it comes back 2 times, it could happen. Maybe you can sacrifice it early on, and well, of course, it's 4/4, so that's also very nice. Most of our creatures are pretty small, 1/1s, and this one is 4/4 when it comes back.
Yeah. Then we're done with the cards that come in as 2 creatures, or basically replace themselves. Now we're going to move on to the cards that give us 3 creatures. The first one is Thatcher Revolt for 2 colorless and a red. It's a sorcery that gives us 3 1/1 red humans with haste. They come onto the battlefield, but the problem is with it is that they get sacrificed at the beginning of the next end step, so till the end of your turn.
Yeah. So they're just on the battlefield that turn, but still it's 6 points of damage. I wouldn't cast this before I had Purphoros on the battlefield. We will have something else in that place. But
yeah, and if you got a lot of mana, of course they come in. You know, you got your 6 points of damage to everybody. You might be able to use Purphoros' ability to boost them, to give them maybe +1 or +2, +0. And then you just attack with them. It doesn't matter because they're going to be sacrificed at the end of the turn anyway, so you might as well just throw them at somebody's face.
Could be. You could also just use some sacrifice outlet that gives you mana to pay additional spells to even put more creatures into the battlefield before they die at the beginning of the next end step.
Sounds like a really good idea. Hordling Outburst is next for colorless and 2 red. It gives us 3 1/1 red goblin tokens, and these ones just stay on the battlefield. They stick around.
Yeah, of course, a little better, gives you more options. So very nice.
Yeah. Precursor Golem is a very interesting card for 5 colorless. It gives us a 3/3 golem, and it comes in with an additional 2 3/3 golems that are basically copies of the Precursor Golem. Because if you target instant or sorcery onto one of the golems, it copies it for the other ones as well.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. If people destroy your golem, all your golems are destroyed, of course. We don't have a lot that targets our golems. We have some stuff, but not a lot. But still, it's 3/3s, and if they die, well, they did their work. They did the points of damage. Well, it will be nice if they stayed on the battlefield, but if not, well, could happen. And in addition to this, if other people have golems, we just have these 3 golems. But if other people do have golems, they target their golems too.
Yeah, yeah.
Could happen.
Cool. Absolutely, very nice. And of course, it's 9 power for 5 mana, which is huge. Let me go to Mog War Marshal for a colorless and a red. Comes in as a 1/1 goblin. In addition to that, a 1/1 goblin token comes in as well, as his little buddy. Then when Mog War Marshal dies, another 1/1 goblin comes in. So that's 3, basically produces 3 tokens. And this guy has Echo, so it makes it a little bit easier to get that 3rd token.
Yeah. When it comes into play at the next turn, the beginning of the next turn's upkeep, you have to pay its Echo cost. Again, it's just the same as the casting cost in this case. To let it stay on the battlefield, but we never do this because we just want the additional token.
Exactly, and the additional 2 points of damage.
Yeah,
to all our opponents. So we always do that. Beetleback Chief is the last one of the ones that give us 3 creatures for 2 colorless and 2 red. We get a 2/2 goblin, and when Beetleback Chief enters the battlefield, put 2 1/1 goblin creature tokens onto the battlefield. That's another 3. That's 6 points of damage to everybody.
Exactly.
And a couple of extra goblins, which we like. Then we move on to the cards that give us 4 more. First one is Goblin Rally for 3 colorless and 2 red. It's a sorcery that gives us 4 1/1 goblins.
Yeah, pretty simple. Don't have anything to say. It's a lot of damage. 8 damage to each opponent.
Wow, yeah. Emrakul's Hatcher also does a lot of damage because for 4 colorless and a red, we get a 3/3 guy. It's a pretty good body. And when he enters the battlefield, put 3 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn tokens onto the battlefield. So that's 4 guys coming in. In addition to that, the Eldrazi spawn tokens have, you may sacrifice this creature, add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool, which is really, really sweet.
Yeah, this is really sweet for this deck because the next turn you have 3 extra mana, so you can kill your opponents even faster. You can just cast a lot of stuff from your hand pretty easily. Very good.
Very good card, yeah. Goblin Marshal is also really good for 4 colorless and 2 red. It's pretty expensive for a 3/3. However, when he comes into play, you get to put down 2 1/1 red goblin tokens, and when it leaves the battlefield, you get to put down 2 1/1 red goblin tokens. And this guy has Echo cost, so that means it's also pretty easy to make that happen.
Yeah, just you have to pay if you want to let it stay on the battlefield. In the next turn's upkeep, you have to pay its cost, just like the other card we just discussed. But you don't do this because if you don't, you will have 5 creatures entering the battlefield in 2 turns with just 1 card.
Yeah.
Which is 10 damage to each opponent.
Yeah, game changing, this card. And we move on to Mirror Battlesphere for 7 colorless, kind of a steep cost, pretty expensive. You get a 4/7. This guy's got a pretty big butt, as big a butt as they come pretty much. And when he enters the battlefield, you get to put down 4/1/1 colorless mirror artifact creatures onto the battlefield. In addition to that, whenever a mirror battlefield attacks, you're allowed to tap your mirror, any mirror, so not just these tokens that it creates, but any mirror that we have, and we have another mirror, so it's possible. And then mirror battlefield gets +X/+0, where X is the amount of mirrors that you tapped, and additionally, it does X damage to defending player.
Yeah, so this card is capable of dealing a lot of damage. Of course, 5 creatures entering is 10 damage, and dealing a lot of damage itself by sacrificing the 4 or even more mirrors on the battlefield. It deals additional, well, 4 damage additional, and it's 8/7 when it does this. So this is pretty big.
Yeah, you don't have to sacrifice any mirrors, you just tap them, and then you can just
tap them,
yeah. Usually it doesn't get through because it doesn't have evasion, it doesn't have trample, it's just like a guy with a big butt, but considering that it also just shoots the damage equally to the defending player, you could just send the mirror battlesphere and just tap your mirror, which is pretty good. Thopter Assembly is also expensive for 6 colorless mana. You get a 5/5 flyer. It's one of the few flyers we have in this deck. But it's massive because at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have no other Thopters, it returns back to your hand and you get to put down 5 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creatures onto the battlefield. That's massive.
Yeah, that is massive. Of course, if you sacrifice the Thopters, you can just keep on doing this. It's 6 creatures in 2 turns with 1 card. And it returns to your hand, so you can just do it again. Maybe you have something else to do. You can sacrifice the Thopters maybe to get additional mana, do it even more often.
Yeah.
So even faster, of course. So you return it to your hand and then you cast it again, cast something else. It can do a lot of damage.
Yeah, and additionally the Thopters that it creates, those tokens, they have flying, so they're really good chump blockers.
Yeah.
Then we move on to the cards that give us X creature tokens. The first one is Tempt with Vengeance for X and red. Basically, everybody gets to choose, starting with you, you get to pay X, and then you put down X 1/1 red elemental creature tokens with haste onto the battlefield. And you get to go around and everybody gets to pay this amount. However, every other player that also pays...
No, they can just put it onto the battlefield and then you can do it again.
Correct, sorry, I was a little bit confused about that. Thinking about a different card. What happens is, indeed, you pay the amount and everybody else gets to just do that same amount. But for every person who does that, you get to put, again, that same amount onto the battlefield.
But no one will, because if you do this, it's, of course, you only do this when you have 6, 7, maybe even 8 mana, and then you put down 5, 6 or 7 creatures onto the battlefield. So that's a lot of damage with Purphoros. And if anybody does that too, they will be dealing that amount of damage to everybody again. So I think nobody would like to do this.
No, exactly. Unless, of course, you're in a situation where one player has a lot of life and the other players have very little, and then they would like to also get the elementals, first of all, to be able to have chump blockers, and second of all, because it will probably kill pretty much everybody else.
You would have even more attackers. I don't know, but still, it could happen. Yeah,
it hasn't happened in our playtesting yet. I'm just brainstorming here.
True.
I mean, clearly I can't even get the card right, so what do I know? Anyway, Firecat Blitz is next for X and 2 red. This one states that you can pay X, obviously, and then you get X 1/1 red cat creature tokens onto the battlefield. And they have haste. However, these ones are just like the little humans that we had before. You have to sacrifice them at the end of the turn, and it has flashback.
Yeah, the flashback is for 2 red mana and sacrifice X mountains. So, well, you should probably do this at end of game. It's a little tricky. If you just sacrifice all your mountains, if somebody has something against it, you will have no mana at all anymore. Could be a problem.
Yeah.
But if you can just do this again, sacrifice all your mountains and put down that many fire cats onto the battlefield, the red cat creature tokens with haste, well, probably just kill everybody pretty fast with this card.
Yeah.
You have like 7 mana, it's 5 creature tokens. The next turn you just pay 2 mana, sacrifice all your 7 or maybe 8 mountains. Maybe you cast another spell, like, well, I don't know, something else.
Yeah.
And then you just put down lots of creatures.
Exactly. It's really the last. It's probably going to be the last spell you cast that game. You do that with flashback then, huh? Chancellor of the Forge is next for 4 colorless and 3 red. It's a great card. You get a 5/5 giant. Very nice already. On top of that, if you have it in your opening hand, you could reveal it and you get to start the game with a 1/1 goblin with haste. Pretty nice. However, if you don't reveal it at the beginning of the game, you still play it regularly. He comes in, he's a 5/5 guy, and additionally, when he enters the battlefield, put X 1/1 goblin creature tokens onto the battlefield, where X is the number of creatures you control. That's going to be massive because you're going to have loads of tokens just sitting there in front of you, and then when this guy comes in, it basically doubles that.
Yeah, this is of course pretty big. It might also be the last card you play. Mostly when you have 7 mana, you will also have 10 creatures on the battlefield, so that will be 10 or even more damage you do with this card. And of course himself, of 10 I mean 20 damage, and he himself comes in too, so that's 22 already. Well, there's one little drawback about the card. That's when you play against a deck that's very controlling, and they will destroy all your goblins all the time. You don't have a lot of creatures on the battlefield, so then it doesn't do that much. So it's actually, when you are already winning, it does massive damage, and when you are not winning that easily, it does less damage.
That's true. However, when you're playing against somebody who's playing a lot of control with individual single pinpoint removal spells, they're not going to be using that against your 1/1 goblin, so they're usually going to stay alive.
Yeah, but maybe you have something that deals damage, board wipes to small damage to everything, or destroy all creatures with the same name, all goblins, something like that. Well, mostly it's going to be a problem because control also takes longer, and removing your enchantment, your indestructible enchantment, might be pretty hard.
Exactly. Alright. Then we go on to the last one of the ones that give us X, and this is Hellion Eruption for 5 colorless and a red. I really love this sorcery because what it states is you sacrifice all creatures you control and you get to put down that many 4/4 red Hellion creature tokens onto the battlefield. That is craziness.
Yeah, it's just, well, for each creature you have, you put down a different creature, of course, and it deals that much damage. I would do this if Purphoros is not a creature, of course, because you can still sacrifice an indestructible creature.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be the best plan.
Rookie mistake.
Yeah. Well, and 4/4 dudes instead of the 1/1 goblins is also just massive to deal lots of damage. If you have like 8 4/4s, it's going to be a problem.
And that's if you didn't already kill everybody with the 2 points of damage you do for each one of the Hellions that come into play.
Yeah, mostly that will be the case, I think.
Exactly. Alright, well those are the multiple creature cards, which is all very nice, but once of course those cards are out of your hand, you can't really use them anymore, except for maybe one more time with flashback, some cards. So we need something that also gives us reliable creatures that come onto the battlefield, so let's have a look at the repeatable tokens. We're going to start with a Goblin Assault, a really great enchantment for 2 colorless and a red. It states that at the beginning of your upkeep, you get to put down a 1/1 Goblin token with haste onto the battlefield. But the downside of it is that all goblin creatures you control have to attack each turn.
Yeah, so it could be that all your goblins are gonna die, but in a multiplayer game, mostly you can attack someone who wouldn't like to block. Maybe you can just pump your goblins. A lot of cases you can do this, of course also with Purphoros himself, but the mana cost for that is a little steep, I think. But still, if they die, well, whatever. Then you just bring on new ones every turn.
Yeah, the biggest part of this is just the fact that you're doing 2 points of damage to everybody when Purphoros is on the table every single turn, reliably. You know, enchantments don't get removed as easily as creatures do. So it's a pretty nice benefit. And on top of that, when you attack, maybe the cost of doing the pump with Purphoros is a little bit too high, but you can attack first before you cast your other spells, and then you can bluff and have people believe you're going to pump them a lot. People don't block, and then you just can use your mana for something else.
Exactly. Well, the main purpose of the cards is just putting down tokens, dealing damage by putting down tokens.
Exactly. Then we move on to Goblin Warrens for 2 colorless and a red. It's also an enchantment, and this one's really, really cool because it states that you can pay 2 colorless and a red mana, sacrifice 2 goblins, and then put 3 goblins, 1/1 goblins back into play.
Yeah, this is pretty big. You just need 2 goblins on the battlefield, and of course some mana and discard. And then you can just keep on growing your army of goblins. Of course with the Goblin Assault, if you don't want to attack, you can do this during combat. So your goblins, you sacrifice the goblins during combat and then you put down 3 new ones. They just stay on the battlefield for the next turn.
Yeah.
If you have 6 mana, this is 6 creatures, 6 goblin tokens a turn, which is 12 damage to each opponent a turn. So this is really big.
Massive, massive card. Wins games, absolutely. And it's one of the few instances where you actually see a female goblin in the artwork. So, noteworthy already. Then we move on to Hammer of Purphoros for a colorless and 2 red. It's a legendary enchantment artifact. It makes sure that all your creatures have haste, which is pretty nice. Additionally, you can pay 2 colorless, a red, tap it, sacrifice a land, and then put down a 3/3 colorless golem enchantment artifact creature token onto the battlefield. That has a lot of attributes. It's not such a great card, I think, but it's just very important to remember that Purphoros needs his hammer when going into battle.
Yeah, he just wouldn't go to battle without it.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing to do about that.
Well, still, of course, if your creatures have haste, we will see some bigger creatures later on. Could be nice if they have haste. While paying the 3 mana and sacrificing a mountain for a 3/3 guy, not that much. So I don't think you're going to do that a lot, but it could happen.
Yeah, exactly. Alright, then we move on to Tooth and Claw, another enchantment. Got a lot of enchantments here, which give us repeatable tokens. For 3 colorless and a red, it's an enchantment that states, sacrifice 2 creatures, so any kind of creature you want. Could be goblins, could be elementals, whatever you have lying around. Then put a 3/1 red beast token named Carnivore onto the battlefield. This one is actually named, comes with a passport, identification, everything. This one's named Carnivore.
It's name tag.
No last name though, very interesting. But what do you think about this card?
Well, this is also a very big. If you have, for example, 6 tokens, or of course the card that makes your goblin tokens attack each turn, you can just sacrifice them, put down the beast tokens, which are pretty big. Well, of course, if you have, for example, 6 creatures, like I just said, and then you do this 3 times, you put down 3 additional creatures, then you end up with 3 creatures, of course. Do it another time, then you have 2 creatures on the battlefield, then another time, so that's 5 times, just by sacrificing some creatures and putting down some new creatures.
Yeah, of course you reduce the amount of creatures you have, but you're doing already, what is it, 10 points of damage right there to everybody.
Yeah. This is also an end game card.
And additionally 3/1 guys is not bad for blocking or attacking.
This is end game, and of course it's also when creatures are dying, you can just sacrifice them yourself and put down new ones.
Yeah, exactly. Ib Halfheart Goblin Tactician is next for 3 colorless and a red. It gives us a 3/2 little guy, Goblin. He is an advisor though. I don't know why that would be relevant, but yeah, it could be. And he advises your goblins that when they attack, you have to sacrifice your goblins, and then they deal 4 points of damage to each creature blocking it. That's pretty scary, actually. Yeah,
you can just keep on attacking with your goblins. People don't like to block your goblins anymore because 4 damage is a lot. Most creatures can't handle that. Of course, it also has the ability to sacrifice the 2 mounts to put 2 1/1 red goblin creature tokens into play. Could also come in handy late game. You don't have to pay any mana to do this, so it's just an end game thing. A lot of cards we have this kind of stuff. Well, it's just a very good card.
Yeah, exactly. To finish the game off with it. It's notable to remember that the goblins don't have the special ability of sacrificing themselves and doing 4 points of damage when they're blocking themselves. It's only on the attack. It's 4 points of damage, and it's not optional. You have to sacrifice them.
That's true. Yeah.
Crow and Horse is next for 4 colorless. We get a 0/4 defender. He comes into play under our control, does 2 points of damage. Then it changes control to an opponent of your choice. And then from that point on, at the beginning of that person's upkeep, each opponent puts a 1/1 white soldier creature token onto the battlefield.
Yeah, pretty weird in our red deck, white soldier creature tokens. But it's very nice. You just put it on the battlefield. It's 2 points of damage to everybody. You give it to the player next to you, to the left. He gets the turn, you put down another token, your white soldier, 2 damage to everybody. Everybody will have the white soldiers, but well, it's not a lot of use to them. It's more use to you, mostly, of course, because it's going to be dealing damage each turn of your opponent that has a Crow and Horse.
Exactly. Snake Basket, I think, is really cool for 4 colorless. We get an artifact that states you can pay X, so that's it. You just pay X, sacrifice Snake Basket, and then you put down X 1/1 green cobra. tokens onto the battlefield. So also end game, you pop it, well, so halfway down the game you can pop it down. End of the game when you got all your mana, you just do your little math, you go, okay, that guy's got 10 life, that guy's got 12 life, okay, I pay 6 mana, bam, everybody's dead.
Yeah, that's it. A lot of end game cards with the repeatable tokens, I see.
Yeah. Throne of Empires is a little bit more reliable, also for earlier in the game. For 4 colorless, we get an artifact. It states pay a white, colorless mana, tap it, put down a 1/1 white soldier. So the soldiers don't need to be alone, the 1/1 white soldiers.
That's true, yeah. It's just for 1 mana a turn, 1 additional creature a turn. So this is very nice. We don't have the crown and the scepter of the empires, but still.
So be it. Trading Post is very similar in the sense that it's also 4 colorless, and it also allows us to pay a colorless, tap it, and put down a 0/1 white goat. 0/1 white goat is not really the same as a soldier, but it's a guy that comes in, does 2 points of damage to each opponent when Purphoros is on the table, and it has some other cool, interesting abilities which we probably won't be using.
Yeah, this you have to pay 1 life to put down the goat, but still very nice. Of course, the other abilities, well, gaining 4 life. Not gonna do that, I think. Sacrifice a creature, return an artifact from your graveyard to your hand. Could be maybe the snake basket, maybe something else. That could happen. Or well, sacrifice an artifact and you draw a card. Could also happen if you have an artifact. Could sacrifice itself to draw more token cards if you need it. Something like that. But mostly you just put down the goats.
Exactly. Then we move on to a really good card, Rakamar, for 2 colorless and 2 red. We get a 2/2 guy with haste, so that's great. Comes in, does the points of damage, and additionally you can pay a red mana, tap it, and then you put down a 3/1 elemental creature token with haste. Does work.
Does a lot of work. If you have Purphoros turn 4, you put down this turn 5. It can already tap it because of the haste. It's 5 mana to put down the token 2, so turn 5 is already 2 tokens, and then each turn onward it's gonna be 1 mana, 3/1 token with haste, so that's 3 additional points of damage, points of power of course, to each opponent when you attack, and of course 2 points of damage from Purphoros to everybody.
Yeah, a little bit better than the 0/1 goat.
Yeah.
Then we go to Mirror Turbine for 5 colorless. You just tap this turbine and you get a 1/1 colorless mirror artifact, which can work with our Mirror Battlesphere.
Each turn you can do this. Of course you can just tap 5 untapped mirror and then you search your library for a mirror card to look up the mirror
Battlesphere?
Battlesphere.
Yeah, exactly. You'd have to tap it for that, but that's fine. Then we go to Kazul, Tyrant of the Cliffs for 3 colorless and 2 red. I love this card. It's a 5/4 Ogre Warrior. In addition to that, whenever a creature your opponent controls attacks you, you get to put down a 3/3 what kind of Ogre creature token onto the battlefield for each creature attacking you, unless that controller pays 3 mana per creature.
Yeah. That's pretty steep for your opponent to pay, so it's pretty much a card that says, you know, just don't attack me because I will put down additional creatures, pretty big ones too, and if, well, when they come onto the battlefield it's just 2 points of damage to each opponent, so mostly they won't be attacking you while this is on the battlefield. They first have to remove this.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically saying, you want to attack me with 4 guys, are you ready to take 8 damage? Probably not. Then we are done with the repeatable tokens actually, so those are going to be all the cards that are going to be giving us cards reliably. Once they're on the table you can use them to attack of course, but what's also fun to do is to have them have an additional use when they're on the battlefield, and that's to sacrifice them for extra benefits. So let's have a look at the sacrifice outlets. We divided sacrifice outlets into cards that sacrifice goblins. We've got devour cards, which come and eat all our creatures and become really massive themselves. And we've got other sacrifice outlets. Let's start with the ones that sacrifice the goblins. Goblin Grenade for a red mana. It's a sorcery. It states as an additional cost to cast Goblin Grenade, sacrifice a goblin. Then you get to do 5 points of damage to either target creature or player.
Yeah, of course mostly we will be dealing 5 damage to a creature which annoys us, that disturbs our creature token engine. Well, of course it's just a one-time bomb, but still for 1 mana 5 damage is a lot. Could also mean, well, maybe there's just 1 player alive, maybe you can just kill him with this. Could be.
Exactly. And it's just fun to fling goblins at people.
That's true.
Then we go to Goblin Soothsayer for 1 red. It's a 1/1 goblin that states you can pay a red, tap him, sacrifice a goblin, then all red creatures you control get +1/+1 till the end of turn.
Yeah. Of course, you only do this when you have a lot of red creatures because, well, you tap this one, so this one can't attack anymore, and you sacrifice one, so you just put 2 aside for the attack phase.
Yeah.
And then all your creatures are bigger, well, so they can attack like bigger creatures. It's nice, but well, mostly it's just for 1 mana, a 1/1 goblin.
Yeah.
Soothsayer.
Which you can sacrifice to the Goblin Grenade, should you want to.
Exactly.
Skirk Prospector for a red mana. It gives you a 1/1 goblin. I don't know why I keep on wanting to say golem. That's because we put in golems and goblins in this deck.
Not good.
Big mistake. Anyway, it states that you can sacrifice a goblin, add 1 red mana to your mana pool. That's pretty big.
Yeah. Now we're talking.
That's right.
This is really huge. Well, some of the cards you have will produce for 5 mana 5 goblins, something like that, a 4, and then you can just sacrifice them all, do 1 card like that again, and maybe you just sacrifice them to put down carnivores we just talked about.
Love the carnivores.
Love the carnivores.
I'm a carnivore myself.
Something like that is just huge. It's just huge. You can just do a lot of stuff with this card. Just the extra mana.
Yeah.
Very handy.
Very good card. Does great work. Goblin Lookout is next for a colorless and a red. Gives us a 1/2 goblin. A little bit of a tougher goblin. States you can tap him, sacrifice a goblin, and all goblins get +2/+0 to the end of turn. It's a little bit better.
Yeah, that is a little bit better. +2/+0 is a lot. Or your goblins become 3/1 if they weren't bigger already. Maybe they have something else like First Strike, which makes them even more annoying. Of course, again with this card you tap this one and sacrifice a goblin, so 2 goblins are already out of the way for combat, so you only do this when you have a lot of goblins.
Yeah, and it also only works for your goblins, so you're going to have to do it when you're heavy on the goblins.
Yeah.
Arms Dealer is a card I really love. For 2 colorless and a red, we get a 1/1 Goblin Rogue. That states you can pay a colorless and a red, sacrifice a goblin, and then it deals, Arms Dealer deals 4 points of damage to target creature.
Yeah, also very big. It's repeatable. Well, in contrast to the Goblin Grenade, of course, well, it's just 4 damage. It's costs 2 mana, but still it's big because it's repeatable.
Yeah.
Nice.
And you're going to use it a lot to just blow up key units of your opponent.
Yeah.
Click Slither for a colorless and 3 red. We get a 3/3 haste insect. Pretty cool. And the cool thing about this guy is you can sacrifice a goblin, or as many goblins as you want, and he gets +2/+2 and trample for each goblin that you sacrificed.
Yeah,
to the end of turn.
This is very nice. When it attacks, well, people just have to block it because if they don't, it's gonna be well, lethal damage because it's gonna be very big.
Yeah.
If they block it, it's still gonna have trample. It also has haste, so it's a really big problem. They are like, oh, what is he gonna do with this card?
Yeah.
This
yeah.
turn.
It's a mess. It's a mess. Click Slither does. It's a great surprise. That's it for the cards that sacrifice our goblins. Now we can look at our Devour cards. These are the hungry cards. Thunder Thrash Elder for 2 colorless and a red. We get a 1/1 guy, but with Devour 3, which is really high. So it means for every creature this guy devours on his way in, he gets 3 +1/+1 counters.
Yeah, this is of course pretty nice. It's going to be very big. I wouldn't be over enthusiastic about this card because it's...
Sorry, I'll rein it in.
Yeah? Okay. No, not you. Because if you just devour everything, it's gonna be very big, of course. Maybe if it has haste, could come in handy. But it doesn't have evasion, doesn't have trample, it gets destroyed pretty easily. Just a Doomblade on it and it's dead. So if you just sacrifice 10 goblins to it, it's gonna be, of course, 31, but it still dies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can modestly boost it so that
Yeah.
it is slightly bigger than the biggest thing on the table, perhaps, but don't go overboard because you'll feel bad when it gets...
Make it a good blocker, maybe sacrifice 3 if you have 10, for example, and then you have a 10/10 on the battlefield, which is very nice, so that might be one of the good things to do with it.
Okay, sounds like a good idea. Yeah, it's not the better one. I actually prefer Caldera Hellion for 3 colorless and 2 red. We get a 3/3 guy with Devour 1, so it's much less. But when it comes into play, you get to do 3 points of damage to each creature.
Yeah, this could be very handy because it destroys a lot of creatures from your opponents. But of course also your creatures, so all the creatures it would destroy you should sacrifice. This includes elementals, goblins, the carnivores, all stuff like that.
Not the carnivores.
Yeah, you have to, because else they will die.
Fine.
Yeah. So you have to do this. You have to think about it when you cast this card, if you want it at that moment in the game.
Yeah, this is one of those cards that usually when you're actually behind, when you're not doing too well, this card can get you out of a sticky situation, because what you will lose will actually be insignificant because you're sacrificing them all to the Devourer of the Hellion, and your opponents will lose a lot of creatures, especially if it's a token-like deck.
True.
Voracious Dragon for 3 colorless and 2 red gives us a 4/4 flying dragon with Devour 1, pretty nice. And you want to be sacrificing goblins to this guy. This guy wants to eat goblins because it deals damage to target creature or player equal to twice the number of goblins at 8.
Yeah, so only the goblins, but still it's gonna deal a lot of damage to a creature or a player. If you, for example, devour 2, it's gonna be a 6/6 flyer, maybe with haste with the Hammer of Purphoros. And it deals 4 damage to a creature or player, and of course you can just devour more goblins to deal more damage, make it bigger.
And it probably did 2 points of damage coming in from Purphoros.
True.
On top of that. Pretty sweet. Then we go to the last Devour card. This one is a doozy. We got Predator Dragon for 3 colorless and 3 red. We get a 4/4 flying haste, Devour 2.
Yeah. So for each creature it devours, it gets 2 counters. So if you do like 4 creatures, it's gonna be 12/12 flying haste. There's one thing that's pretty nice about these big devouring dragons, because they are one of the few flying creatures in our deck, so it could block the flying creatures of the opponent. So that could be a reason to just pump them to be able to block the bigger creatures.
Yeah, once again, you always have to be careful not to go overboard, as I like to do with the Devour, because they can be removed relatively easily. Then we move on to the other sacrifice outlets. First one is Ashnod's Altar for 3 colorless. It states, sacrifice a creature, add 2 colorless mana to your mana pool. This card is redonkulous in this deck.
Yeah, this is really nice. You have some red mana, and you just you have almost an infinite amount of colorless mana, provided you have enough cards in your hand, of course, to be able to put down enough creatures to sacrifice again and again and again.
Yeah.
A lot of mana is very nice in this deck. Yeah, very good card.
Great. Spawning Pit is next for 2 colorless. Say sacrifice a creature, put a charge counter on Spawning Pit. Then when you've put enough charge counters on it, so you sacrifice enough creatures to it, you get to pay 1, remove 2 charge counters from it, and then you get to put down a 2/2 spawn artifact creature token onto play. So actually you start doing that as of sacrificing 2 creatures.
Yeah. Well, you will do this a little later on in the game. Could be nice, but not as good as the Ashnod's Altar.
No.
Especially if you have an X card in your hand on the altar.
Yeah. But it's a nice little artifact for if people start removing your things, you can just sacrifice them to your Spawning Pit, and then for 1 mana you'll get creatures back.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, true.
Culling Days is also very nice for 2 colorless. It's an artifact that allows us to also tap and then sacrifice a creature. So the Spawning Pit, you can just sacrifice as many creatures to it in one go as you want. The Culling Days, you can only sacrifice 1 per turn because it has to tap. However, when you pay 1 mana and sacrifice the Culling Days, you get to draw a card for each charge counter on it. So for every creature you sacrifice to it.
We don't have a lot of draw in this deck, but this is a card that could draw you some cards.
Yeah, especially if you do it later in the game, you've done it a bunch of turns already, and your hand is empty. All of a sudden, it's got 7 counters on it, and then your hand is full again later in the game. All right, well, those are all the cards that allow us to sacrifice creatures for some kind of benefit. Now we're going to look at the cards that give all our elementals, our goblins, and our carnivores some extra synergy when they're on the battlefield. Let's go have a look at that. The first card that gives us some kind of synergy with the creatures on the battlefield is Signal Pest for 1 colorless. It gives us a 0/1 with Battle Cry. In addition to that, Signal Pest can't be blocked except by creatures with flying or reach. It has kind of like pseudo flying. And Battle Cry states that other creatures attacking with this creature get +1/+0 till the end of turn.
Yeah, so this is very nice when you have a lot of goblins, they become 2/1 already. Nice.
Yeah, or any other creatures.
Of course.
Yeah. Goblin War Driver for 2 red gives us a 2/2 guy, so pretty good. For 2 mana you get a 2/2 Goblin, pretty decent. And this one also has Battle Cry.
Yeah, same thing as a Signal Pest, only this is a little tougher to remove. There's 2 toughness and of course it is already 2 power.
Yeah, whereas the Signal Pest has 0 power.
Yeah.
So, Hero of Oxid Ridge for 2 colorless and 2 red gives us a 4/2 with haste, pretty big. Also has Battle Cry, awesome. In addition to that, whenever Hero of Oxid Ridge attacks, creatures with power less than 1 can't attack, with 1 or less.
Can block. Yeah.
Can block, sorry.
Can block,
yeah.
So this is very nice. It's a little evasion for all your small goblins. They have to block with a bigger creature than the goblin itself is, which is nasty. It also has haste and of course the Battle Cry we just mentioned 2 times. So very nice to be able to cast this card.
Exactly, and it comes out of nowhere because it has haste, so it's a big surprise for people. Ogre Battle Driver does great work for 2 colorless and 2 red. We get a 3/3 Ogre Warrior. In addition to that, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, it gains haste and +2/+0 to the end of turn.
Yeah, this is very nice. For example, if you put down with a card 5 tokens, they all have haste and +2, so you put down the 5 tokens, that's 10 damage to each opponent, and you have 15 power on the battlefield because it has haste, which is very nice.
You don't want that. Well, as your opponent, you want that. You want that playing this.
Yeah.
It gives you a warm feeling inside. But that could be Purphoros being so close to you.
Yeah.
Hellrider is next for 2 colorless and 2 red. We get a 3/3 Devil, also with haste. And this guy states that whenever a creature you control attacks, Hellrider deals 1 damage to defending player. So that also kind of boosts the power of your little goblins.
This could be massive because, well, of course you have a lot of goblins. It's direct damage, so they can block it. It's just a lot of damage. Very nice. Yeah.
Fury Stoke Giant is a great card for 3 colorless and 2 red. We get a 3/3 guy. Not the most important part of this, because when he comes into play, other creatures gain tap. This creature deals 2 points of damage to target creature or player till the end of turn.
Yeah, this is also a massive card. You have a lot of creatures on the battlefield. You can just kill off a lot of creatures, or you do a lot of additional damage. It also has persist, so if it dies, it comes back with a -1/-1 counter, so it comes back as a 2/2. Well, of course it enters again, so it enters 2 times this card. So it deals 4 damage to each opponent all by itself, and then 2 times all your creatures will be able to deal 2 direct damage each.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Then we go to Bloodmark Mentor for a colorless and a red. We get a 1/1 Goblin, which states that red creatures you control have haste. Most of our creatures are red, so it's nice.
First strike.
Oh, sorry, first strike, which is really nice considering we already have plenty of haste, so we don't want the haste.
Yeah.
We wanted the first strike, and this Bloodmark Mentor provides that, which means that when your goblins get boosted in power but not toughness, the fact that the Bloodmark Mentor is on the battlefield makes them really hard to block.
Yeah, this is very annoying for your opponent. This creature is just very important to be able to attack with all your pumped creatures, your power pump, of course. So this is very nice.
Yeah, Paragon of Fierce Defiance for 3 colorless and a red gives us a 2/2 Human Warrior. States that other red creatures you control get +1/+1. That's nice. That stays, so that just makes them harder to remove, makes them great in attacking, makes all your little guys better in blocking as well. Additionally, you can pay a red, tap the Paragon of Fierce Defiance, and then target red creature you control gains haste until the end of turn. I stated we don't need more haste, but you know, 1 more, why not?
Yeah, why not? Well, of course it could come in handy to boost your bigger creatures that come onto the battlefield, but of course the most important thing it does is give all your red creatures +1/+1. We, well, almost only red creatures in our deck, so well, most creatures will have this benefit.
Yeah, exactly. Skirk Fire Marshal is a bomb for 3 colorless and 2 red, and it's actually pretty much literally a bomb because not only do you get a little 2/2 guy with protection from red, and additionally you can tap 5 untapped goblins you control, and then it deals 10 damage to each creature and each player, so the whole battlefield blows up.
Yeah, so you kill everybody without, of course, regenerate or indestructible or something like that. Well, and in addition to that, your Skirk Fire Marshal will survive this, because of course that's protection from red, so it can't be dealt damage by red sources. And he himself, of course, is a red source, so he can deal damage to itself. Well, like you said, it just blows up the whole battlefield. Purphoros will also survive because he's indestructible, so that's also not a problem. So this is just very big. Well, mostly it will just kill everything on the field.
Yeah, they're good buddies, him and Purphoros. Then we go to Pyroheart Wolf for 2 colorless and a red. It's a 1/1 guy, but whenever Pyroheart Wolf attacks, each other creature you control that's also attacking can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures.
Yeah. This is also very annoying. You of course have a lot of creatures, a lot of tokens. Your opponents probably won't, so they can block all your goblins. Well, even without this card they couldn't. There still some will get through, but with this card even more will get through. And of course it has Undying, so it will enter the battlefield 2 times. The second time it will be entering as a 2/2 with a +1/+1 counter.
Yeah, pretty nice. And additionally, when people have to block with 2 or more creatures, they're probably going to end up having to make trades, 2-for-1 trades, against your pumped goblins, for example. Or the goblin that has to sacrifice itself and do 4 points of damage to each creature it blocks.
Something like a lot of stuff in this deck that could work very well with the Pyroheart Wolf or some of the other cards we just mentioned here.
Yeah. Caterwauling Vogard is very similar, except it's more expensive because it costs 3 colorless and a red. We get a 2/2 Goblin Shaman that states each goblin you control can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures, and each elemental you control can't be blocked except for 2 or more creatures. So it's very similar to Pyroheart Wolf, but it really fixes itself to just the goblins and just the elementals, which we have a good amount of.
Pyroheart Wolf I think is a little better, but the Pyroheart Wolf has to attack itself. This one does not. So, well, it's a very nice card, but I think for 4 mana it's a little less of a threat than the Pyroheart Wolf.
You know what would make this card better? If it would state each carnivore you control can't be blocked, so 2 more creatures.
Yeah,
that's wishful thinking. That's made for the next set of cards. Okay, well, those are the cards that give us creature synergy, but naturally, as always, we can't cast any of these cards unless we have the proper lands, so let's have a look at the lands. Considering this is a mono-colored commander deck, we have divided the lands into 39 mountains and 1 non-basic land. The non-basic land is Kara Keep for, well, it's a land that gives us a colorless mana when we want to, which is pretty nice. In addition to that, we can pay a colorless mana, a red mana, tap it, and then we get to put down a 0/1 red Cobalt creature token onto the battlefield.
Yeah. Well, of course we don't have a lot of non-basics in this deck because we don't need duels. We really don't want lands that come in tapped, which could be annoying. We want a lot of speed in this deck. Well, this card is very relevant. It doesn't come in tapped, and it can put down creature tokens, which this deck does a lot. So this is very synergistic. So very nice land. Well, of course we only need mountains, except this land.
Yeah, and considering it's a 0/1 Cobalt creature, it can keep the little goat company, which is also 0/1.
That's true.
You can just chill together. All right.
And one additional card,
which is
the Battle Cry card, the Signal Pest.
That's true. The
Also
3 of them hang out with their 0 power. All right, those are the land cards. Let's have a look at the conclusion. In conclusion, this deck is a lot of fun. When people are talking about the clock, with this game, you are the clock. You dictate how long the game is going to take, because as the game progresses, you're putting down a lot of little creatures. Everybody's taking 2 damage, 2 damage, 2 damage. Everybody's looking at you going, okay, this person needs to go. Maybe that's a little bit less fun that everybody wants you dead. But the great thing about this as well is that you have all these little guys that are willing to lay down their lives, all these little token guys, and they're entirely sacrificable. They have no more use for you, technically, once they've entered the battlefield with Purphoros. They've done their damage, and then you can use them at your whim to protect yourself. So it's really cool. You're sitting behind a wall of goblins and elementals and carnivores, and you're shooting everybody with Purphoros. It's great fun.
Yeah, this is a great beginner's deck. It's pretty simple. Well, it just puts down loads of creatures and deals damage by doing this. It's just beautiful in its simplicity, I think. Well, and of course, yeah, I think there's a lot of choices you can make, like sacrificing the creatures, so beginners will make that mistake by devouring all their goblins. Well, then they could have a problem.
Let them do it.
Oh,
I said let them learn.
That's just nice.
Like I did.
Well, all the other players will be sitting like, oh my god, how am I gonna get rid of that Purphoros guy, because he's gonna kill me in time. I can't do anything about it right now. Maybe someone can, one time, maybe 2 times. It could be very annoying for you, but mostly, well, they won't be able to remove him that easily.
Yeah, so it's really lovely to have a commander that's on your side, doesn't get removed very easily, and all your guys are expendable. It's pretty sweet. Not only that, but it's pretty affordable, right?
Yeah, this deck is just below $35, so that's very cheap. It's just easy to buy for any beginner to just learn the game. Well, only red, of course. Pretty simple too. Pretty simple mana base too.
Yeah.
We did this math, the below $35 on magiccards.info. This is a site that compares prices of a lot of shops in, well, for I think the United States only.
Yeah.
And we took the median prices for all the cards, so you can really buy this deck for below $35. And this price, of course, is including our commander and including all our lands, our 39 mountains and the Keep.
That's right. It's very affordable, and in addition to that, what's also very affordable is clicking on the subscribe button, because that's actually free, so it doesn't get any more affordable than that. If you subscribe, you get a notification every time we make a new video. On top of that, it lets us know, hey guys, you're doing a good job, pat on the back, we're happy, you're happy, and then we can get on and make some more videos.
Yeah.
In addition to that, I would like to ask you if you have a question of the day for us today.
Yeah. The question of this day is, what other mechanic would work well with the goblin and token generation in this deck? You can leave your comments below this video. So that's about it.
Alright, well, I'm David.
And I'm Ruud.
This was Budget MTG Decks.